At 5 a.m. in New York, the sky carries a very specific tone. The Sun is at 6 degrees Pisces, moving closely with Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and the North Node, all gathered in the same sign. The Moon is in Gemini at 18 degrees, adding movement and mental activity. Mars is finishing its journey through Aries at 25 degrees, close to Chiron. Pluto is steady in early Aquarius. Uranus is late in Taurus. Neptune has just entered Aries. This is not a simple sky, it's layered. When so much of the chart concentrates in Pisces, there is a softening of edges. Pisces blurs hard lines. It dissolves certainty. It invites reflection instead of reaction. With the Sun and Mercury aligned in Pisces, your thinking is illuminated, but not in a sharp, analytical way. It's illuminated through feeling, through subtle awareness, through noticing what sits beneath the surface rather than what's loud and obvious. At the same time, the Moon in Gemini keeps the mental field active. Conversations move, notifications ping, thoughts multiply. Gemini wants input, Pisces wants depth, and Mars in late Aries still carries a forward-driving impulse, a subtle urgency to act, to move, to resolve something. So the inner shift today may feel like this. Part of you wants to slow down and sense what's real. Another part wants to hurry up and decide. One part wants quiet. Another wants stimulation. This tension isn't a malfunction. It's today's weather shaping you from the inside out. Under a Sun, Mercury alignment in Pisces, reactive thinking becomes easier than you realize. Not because you're aggressive, but because your nervous system is navigating mixed signals. When clarity doesn't arrive in straight lines, the mind can try to force it. When emotions are subtle, the impulse may be to override them. But the deeper tone of this sky is not speed, it's sensitivity. It's a day where the mind and the nervous system are in conversation, where awareness is available, but only if you're willing to notice the softer signal beneath the noise. When the day begins under this mix of Pisces water and Gemini air, the first signals often appear quietly in the body before the mind forms any narrative around them. A Sun-Mercury alignment in Pisces brings a kind of internal drifting, a sense that your attention is widening rather than sharpening. Your breath may feel higher in the chest, or you might notice that your exhale is shorter than usual. Even before your thoughts speed up, your body registers the shift. You might wake with a subtle buzzing at the center of your forehead, as if your mind is awake before you are. Or there's a gentle pressure behind the eyes, not painful, but fog-like. These are early signs of a Gemini moon interacting with a Pisces cluster, mental movement floating on emotional water. Your shoulders may rise without you noticing, as though preparing for something uncertain. Your jaw might tighten in small, intermittent pulses, tiny muscle contractions that come and go quickly. Mars, at the final degrees of Aries, adds a layer of restlessness. This isn't high-intensity adrenaline, it's more like an inner nudge, a sense of wanting to move, to change position, to refresh the screen of your life. You might feel an urge to get up suddenly, to check your phone again, even when nothing important is there, or to jump between tasks to relieve a subtle discomfort in the body. Sometimes Mars shows up as tapping your foot, rearranging items on the table, or adjusting your posture repeatedly without knowing why. And Chiron nearby means that movement can press on old tenderness. Not in a dramatic way, more like a brief emotional pinch. A memory flickers, a self-critique arises and dissolves. Your chest may feel tighter for a moment before softening again. These sensations are not random. They are the body signaling that a deeper emotional thread is being touched. even if the mind hasn't caught up yet. Meanwhile, Saturn in Pisces creates a slow undercurrent, a heaviness behind the heart, or a quiet sense of needing to conserve energy. It can show up as wanting to take deeper breaths, or as a slight pull downward in the solar plexus. When Saturn and Pisces combine, the body often asks for pacing, for gentleness, even when the mind is tempted to rush. As the moon moves through Gemini, breathing becomes irregular. Fast one moment, shallow the next. Your thoughts may leap, and the body responds with micro surges of tension. You may feel like you're leaning forward internally, as though anticipating the next thing before you've finished the current one. But underneath all this, Venus in Pisces softens the internal field. The body may crave warmth, a soft sweater, a hot drink, the comfort of dimmer lighting. There's a longing to soothe the nervous system, to slow the pace, to reconnect with something familiar or safe. Even if your thoughts are scattered, your body may be asking for presence. So the early physical signs of today's sky look like contrasts: a restless mind in a tender body, quick thoughts in slow emotional water, a desire to act layered over a desire to breathe. The body feels these competing currents long before the story becomes clear. And noticing these subtle shifts, the buzz, the tension, the craving for softness, becomes the first doorway into understanding how today's astrology is landing within you. As the morning turns into the flow of daily life, the sky's mixed signals begin to show up in places that feel familiar. Your inbox, your conversations, your decision-making, your schedule. The Gemini moon highlights the little jumps in attention, while the Pisces cluster softens your emotional boundaries, making everything feel slightly closer, slightly louder, slightly more personal than usual. You may notice it first in your communication. You open an email intending to reply in 2 sentences, but find yourself rewriting the same line 3 times, trying to get the tone right. Or you hit send and immediately question whether it sounded too sharp or too vague. The Sun-Mercury alignment in Pisces heightens sensitivity to nuance, and the Gemini moon multiplies the number of thoughts you attach to each interaction. A simple message can become a mini internal debate. Work tasks may reveal a similar pattern. You begin a project with clarity, only to pivot halfway through because a new idea arrives, then another. It's not confusion, it's overload. The mind accelerates while the emotional field stays soft, and the moment they collide, your focus slips like water through your fingers. You may switch tabs more than usual, check your calendar again even though you checked it 5 minutes ago, or move between tasks without fully landing in any of them. In meetings or group conversations, Mars in late Aries can heighten your urge to respond quickly. You may feel a subtle push to speak before you've fully processed your thought, or you might find yourself reacting to someone's tone more than their words. Chiron nearby can turn even neutral feedback into an emotional echo, a reminder of past moments when you felt misunderstood or exposed. These moments are small, but they create a ripple that affects how you show up for the rest of the day. Decision-making is another place where this transit becomes tangible. Under this sky, you might feel torn between acting immediately and waiting for clarity. The Gemini moon says, just choose. Pisces says, feel it first. Aries says, move. Taurus, through Uranus's presence, whispers, make sure it's stable. This blend can produce micro-hesitations, standing in the kitchen unsure what you want to eat, staring at your to-do list without knowing where to start, or contemplating a message for too long before replying. Interpersonally, the softness of Venus in Pisces makes you more porous to others' emotional states. You may pick up on subtle shifts in tone or sense that someone is stressed even when they don't say anything. This can deepen empathy, but it can also make boundaries blur if you're not careful. Emotional dynamics that you normally shrug off, someone's delay in answering, a brief moment of tension, a small misunderstanding, might take up more space than they need to. And woven through all these moments is an undercurrent of reactivity. Not dramatic reactivity, but the quick, instinctive internal movements that happen when your nervous system is processing more than usual. The pattern might show up as over-explaining yourself, rehearsing a conversation in your mind, or feeling the need to justify a decision even when no one asked. Yet within these small frictions lies opportunity. Each moment where you rush, hesitate, or over-process is also a moment where awareness can enter. Under a Sun, Mercury, Pisces alignment, clarity comes not from thinking faster, but from slowing down just enough to sense what story you're telling yourself as you move through the day. Today's sky is not a test, it's a mirror, reflecting how you respond when your inner world is both tender and busy at the same time. And these reflections, though subtle, shape the way the rest of the day unfolds. The core pattern of today is the tension between reactive thinking and reflective awareness. It's not a battle, and it's not a flaw in you. It's what happens when fast air hits slow water, and Mars in Aries refuses to let the surface stay still. You may notice this pattern emerging quietly, through the smallest moments rather than dramatic events. But once you recognize it, the entire day begins to make sense. Reactive thinking shows up whenever the mind tries to outrun a feeling. Under a Gemini moon, thoughts multiply like branches. One idea becomes 5. One worry becomes a chain reaction. Then Pisces steps in, softening everything, blurring the lines, making you feel more than you can articulate. When these two overlap, you might fill in emotional blanks with assumptions, jump to conclusions, or craft stories without enough information. It's not intentional. It's a nervous system moving faster than your emotional clarity. Reflective awareness, on the other hand, is the Pisces invitation, a slower, quieter mode. It's the instinct to pause before responding, to breathe before deciding, to sense before speaking. But because the Gemini moon brings activity and Mars in Aries adds urgency, this quieter mode can get overshadowed. That's why today's pattern feels like a tug of war between doing and understanding, clarity and noise, reaction and noticing. The heart of the day is not about making a perfect choice or mastering your emotions. It's about recognizing when you're solving an emotional moment with speed instead of presence. You may catch yourself rushing to answer a message when what you really need is a moment to feel your body settle. You may try to resolve tension quickly when the wiser move is to let your nervous system downshift first. The impulse to fix is Aries. The impulse to feel into it is Pisces. The impulse to talk it out is Gemini. All three are valid, they're just arriving at different tempos. Today's pattern also highlights the subtle ways self-criticism can sneak in. When your mind is active but your emotions are soft, you might assume the fluctuation means something is wrong with you. Why can't I decide? Why am I overthinking this? Why did that small comment bother me? But this sky isn't asking for perfection, it's asking for awareness of pacing, your internal pacing, not the world's. Pisces wants your honesty, Gemini wants your curiosity, Aries wants your courage. Together, they're shaping a day where slowing down reactive thinking becomes an act of self-respect. So the pattern isn't about shutting down your thoughts or suppressing your impulse to act. It's about noticing the moment where reaction takes the lead and gently handing the steering wheel back to awareness. This is the core rhythm of February 25th. A day where your internal weather invites you to shift from rushing toward clarity to allowing clarity to rise naturally. When we look deeper into why this pattern appears today, the astrology offers a kind of emotional map. Not to explain everything, but to illuminate the terrain you're already walking through. The Sun, Mercury alignment in Pisces, sits at the center of this map. When Mercury, the planet of thinking and processing, merges with the Sun in a water sign, the mind becomes illuminated through intuition rather than structure. Instead of sharp lines, you get soft contours. Instead of clear answers, you get impressions, sensations, and subtle emotional signals. This is why reactive thinking becomes easier. Your usual mental guardrails are more permeable. Pisces dissolves separation. It blends thoughts with feelings, intuition with memory, imagination with reality. Under this influence, your mind doesn't categorize experiences immediately. It absorbs them. It holds them. And because Mercury is illuminated by the Sun, everything you absorb lights up internally. Small comments, tone shifts, uncertainties, unfinished conversations. It isn't too much. It's simply more data entering your emotional system than you're used to translating in real time. The Moon in Gemini adds a contrasting rhythm. Gemini moves quickly, picking up details, asking questions, forming connections. When the Moon, your emotional filter, sits in this sign, your inner world becomes more mentally active. You don't just feel something, you narrate it, analyze it, respond to it. So the emotional softness of Pisces meets the mental speed of Gemini, creating the mixed currents you've sensed all day. Then there's Mars in late Aries, sitting close to Chiron. Mars in Aries is raw instinct. Act now, decide now, move now. But when Mars aligns with Chiron, that instinct intersects with old emotional sensitivities. This is why the urge to fix something may collide with a wave of tenderness or doubt. It isn't regression, it's the body remembering something before the mind names it. Chiron doesn't wound you today, it reveals the places where urgency has covered vulnerability. Mars pushes forward, Pisces pulls inward, Gemini looks around. These conflicting impulses produce the sensation of internal friction. Saturn in Pisces plays a quieter but important role. Saturn is structure, discipline, accountability. Pisces is fluid, emotional, intuitive. When Saturn sits in this sign, it creates a slow, grounding undertone, asking you to be responsible for your emotional pacing. Not to force yourself, but to honor what your system can realistically hold. This is why, even when the mind races, something inside you may request gentleness, slower breath, softer tone, a moment away from noise. Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus form the background frequency. Pluto reshapes identity through subtle internal shifts. Uranus questions stability, exposing routines or habits that no longer support the person you are becoming. These planets move slowly, but their influence adds to the feeling that your internal wiring is changing, how you think, how you respond, how you regulate. They contribute to today's awareness that your old ways of reacting might not fit you anymore. So this pattern, reactive thinking versus reflective awareness, is not random. It's the natural expression of a sky where water softens, air quickens, and fire agitates. The challenge isn't to master these elements, but to recognize how they interact within you. Pisces asks you to feel. Gemini asks you to think. Aries asks you to move. And Saturn quietly asks you to choose a rhythm that supports rather than overwhelms you. Understanding this astrological backdrop doesn't remove the complexity, but it gives context to the internal shifts you've been sensing. Today is less about resolving contradictions and more about understanding why they're present in the first place. There's a familiar lens many people default to on days like this, a belief that restlessness means something is wrong, that confusion means you're falling behind, or that vulnerability is a sign you're losing your edge. Under older spiritual framings, the mind might leap to dramatic conclusions. I'm being tested, or I need to push through this, or clarity should have arrived by now. But today's sky invites a different kind of interpretation, one that doesn't treat your emotional shifts as problems, but as data. The old lens says, if you feel scattered, tighten your focus. If you feel emotional, suppress it. If you hesitate, force a decision. But when Pisces and Gemini are active at the same time, the mind isn't meant to move in a straight line. The emotional field is wide, porous and sensitive. Forcing clarity under these conditions isn't strength, it's resistance. What looks like indecision might actually be your inner system protecting you from choosing too quickly. What looks like inconsistency might be the natural rhythm of a nervous system adjusting to competing signals. Another outdated interpretation is the idea that tenderness under Mars, Chiron energy, is weakness. The old framing would say, be tough, don't let anything get to you, push harder. But today's astrology reveals something else entirely. Feeling a flicker of vulnerability when you try to move forward doesn't mean you're slipping. It means you're meeting the part of yourself that actually needs attention. Mars highlights movement, but Chiron highlights the wound underneath the movement. Slowing down doesn't block progress. Sometimes it's the thing that prevents you from repeating an old pattern. You may also notice an instinct to narrate everything happening inside you, trying to create a clean story out of a very fluid emotional landscape. The old lens would insist on labeling every shift. I'm anxious, I'm tired, I'm off today. But under a Sun, Mercury alignment in Pisces, not everything has to be named immediately. Some feelings resolve simply by being acknowledged without interpretation. There's another meaningful reframe here. Sensitivity is not a regression. When Venus and Saturn share Pisces, sensitivity becomes a form of intelligence. It allows you to sense where your boundaries soften and where they strengthen. It lets you feel the emotional temperature of a conversation before words catch up. What may feel like overstimulation could actually be heightened awareness. And what feels like hesitation may be your intuition asking you to pace yourself with care. Instead of viewing today as a struggle between being strong or being emotional, think of it as a shift in how strength expresses itself. Strength begins in the millisecond you notice your body speaking, before the mind rushes in to shut it down. Strength can be pausing long enough to respond from clarity instead of reacting from urgency. Strength can be the small, grounded choice that interrupts an old loop, not because you forced yourself to transcend it, but because you finally understood it. Nothing about this sky asks you to power through. It asks you to reinterpret your inner landscape with more compassion, more nuance, and more trust in the quieter signals. Under the old lens, you might have rushed toward certainty. Under today's sky, you're invited to let clarity rise in its own time, shaped by sensitivity rather than speed. Moving through a day like this becomes gentler when you stop trying to outperform the sky and instead learn to move with it. The goal isn't to override the mixed currents of Pisces, Gemini, and Aries, but to recognize how they meet inside you and respond with small acts of alignment. You don't need a checklist or a dramatic ritual. The integration today is subtle, grounded in ordinary moments that become easier when you treat your internal experience as something worth listening to. One helpful starting point is pacing, not slowing down entirely, not speeding up to match your mind's pace, just finding a rhythm that feels sustainable. Under a Gemini moon, you may feel pushed to multitask, to respond quickly, to fill every moment with movement or thought. But the Pisces cluster asks for softness. If you feel your breath climbing toward your chest, that's a cue. If your shoulders tighten or your jaw locks, that's another. These aren't interruptions to your day, they're invitations. Invitations to take one deeper breath, to put your feet flat on the ground, to give your mind a moment to settle before you act. Integration can also come through attention, not hypervigilance, but awareness of when you drift into reactivity. Maybe you catch yourself writing a long message you don't actually need to send. Maybe you feel irritation and notice the impulse to fix something immediately. Maybe you sense an emotional ache that wants space rather than a solution. Each time you notice, you're already shifting out of autopilot. That noticing, quiet, compassionate, unforced, is the heart of today's alignment. Another way to support yourself is through small reductions. If conversations feel too fast, speak more slowly. If your mind feels loud, reduce inputs rather than trying to think harder. Fewer tabs, fewer explanations, fewer self-interrogating questions. When the inner world is porous, less stimulation creates more clarity. This isn't retreating, it's choosing signals over noise. Small grounding gestures also help bridge the gap between Pisces softness and Gemini movement. A warm drink, a slow walk in cold air, a moment with your hand over your chest or belly. These actions don't solve problems, they change your internal tempo, allowing your responses to come from a steadier place. They help your nervous system integrate the day's mix of emotion and thought, letting clarity emerge without being forced. Finally, today invites you to be honest with yourself in a gentle way. If your energy dips, let it. If you feel touched by something small, acknowledge it. If your mind wants to race ahead but your body asks to pause, give the body one beat of respect. Integration isn't about achieving balanced perfection. It's about giving your internal signals enough room to guide you toward a more grounded way of moving through the day. When you honor these quiet adjustments, reactive thinking slows on its own. Clarity becomes less about answers and more about alignment. And you begin to experience the subtle intelligence of this Sun, Mercury, Pisces day, not as something mystical, but as something deeply human. As the day winds down, the mixed currents of Pisces, Gemini, and Aries begin to settle into something softer. The mind that raced earlier may feel a little quieter now, not because every question has been answered, but because the urgency around those questions has eased. Pisces evenings often feel like this, a gentle dissolving, a loosening of the inner grip, a reminder that clarity doesn't always arrive through effort. You might notice small releases in your body, shoulders dropping, breath deepening, thoughts slowing their pace. Even if the day felt scattered or emotionally tender, something about the night air makes it easier to accept where you are without forcing a different state. The Sun-Mercury alignment in Pisces isn't here to deliver dramatic revelations. It's here to help you become more familiar with your inner landscape, especially the parts you usually rush past. So, as you close out the day, you don't need a final conclusion. You don't need to tie everything together. What you gathered, moments of awareness, moments of slowing down, moments where reactivity softened, is already enough. Let the small insights stand on their own. They don't need to become a plan yet. They don't need to become a decision. If you feel called, you can take one quiet reflection with you into the evening. Where did I allow myself to pause today? And what shifted, even slightly, when I did? Questions like these aren't meant to solve anything. They simply keep the door open to noticing yourself more clearly. And if you'd like to stay connected to this kind of grounded, astrology-based guidance, you're welcome to follow along with the channel. It's a space where we explore days like this, not to predict your path, but to help you walk it with more awareness, more steadiness, and more gentleness toward yourself. For now, let the day soften behind you. Let your breath return to its natural rhythm. Tomorrow has its own sky to navigate. For tonight, your only job is to let this one settle.